Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nguyen. I'm working for Management Board for Mission Cultural Heritage in Vietnam. Today, I would like to introduce to you about Mission Sanctuaries, a World Cultural Heritage Site in Vietnam. So firstly, I would like to thank the excellent Center for Integrated Research of World Heritage, Creative City and Historic Urban Landscape in Southeast Asia, known as IWCH. I would like to thank Professor Krian Krai, Cursori, Director of IWCH, Archeologist, Researcher Ko Kittikhun Janyam, and Dr. Phisutthilaksana Boonto, giving me a chance to introduce you about Mission Sanctuaries. And the topic of my presentation is Mission World Heritage Site, the Architecture and Conservation. So my presentation will divide it into some parts. First, I will introduce the general information and location of Mission Heritage Site. Next point, I will talk about the characteristic of architecture in Mission Site. And next, I will talk about the conservation in terms of the material, techniques, the principle of conservation, and some example. And last one, I have some conclusion. And you know that there were unique cultures on the coast of contemporary Vietnam, Champa, basically owning its spiritual origin to the Hinduism of Indian subcontinent. This graphically is illustrated by the remains of a series of impressive temples and towers in the site that were religious and political center of Champa Kingdom for the most of its existences. Mission sanctuaries date from the 4th to 13th century CE. This heritage is located in the mountainous border Yixing District, Quảng Nam Province in central Vietnam. Is situated within an elevated geographical basin surrounded by rings of mountain, which provides a watershed for the sacred Thu Bong River. Mission contains the evidence of cultural interaction between Champa and other ancient states in Asia, such as India, China, Cambodia. Under this influence, many temples were built to Hindu divinities, but above on Shiva. Shiva Hinduism remained the established state religion. The monuments of Mission sanctuaries are the most important construction of Champa civilization. The temple and tower have a variety of architectural design, symbolizing the quickness and purity of Mount Meru. Mission monuments, like in other ancient Champa brick monuments, has been built with a unique technique. The mortar joints between the bricks are almost invisible. While the monuments are still remain, they are constructed in 5 bricks with stone pillar and decorated with the sandstone bas-reliefs depicting the scenes from Hindu mythologies. Mission heritage is remarkable by architectural ensemble that developed over periods of 10 centuries. It presents vivid pictures of spiritual and political life in an important phase of the history of Southeast Asia. Mission was listed by UNESCO as a World Cultural Heritage in December 1999 by 2 criterion. The criterion second, Mission sanctuaries is an exceptional example of cultural interchange with an indigenous society, adapting to the external cultural influence, notably the Hindu art and architecture of the Indian subcontinent. Criterion thus, the Champa kingdoms were an important phenomenon in the political and cultural history of Southeast Asia, vividly illustrated by the ruins of Mission. So here we can see the location of Mission site, Mission heritage, in the central of Vietnam nowadays. So you see Mission here. Beside Mission monuments, you see another red dot. You see another red dot. These red dots are the Champa monuments were established along the coast, you see, along the coast of Vietnam. Also, some monuments in central highlands of Vietnam. So based on the monuments of Chamba, we can imagine about the territory of Chamba in ancient times. So almost the monuments were established along the coastline, you can see. So you see that some scholars divided Chamba into 5 areas, and Bison belong to Amaravati areas. It's established on the north of Chamba. And here we see the location of Chamba. It is stated location. It is located in the midpoint on the sea route between China and Indonesia. India and China. Also Straits of Malacca to China. It is also the gateway of the continent states here, and easy to trade with and commute with another country in Southeast Asia. You can see. And here it shows the maritime trading network from the 7th to 9th century between Chamba and another countries in Asia. You see the Chamba trades with many places in China, also South India, also some country in Southeast Asia. And from the 10th to 15th centuries, this period, the network of maritime trading is denser, you see, more rich. Chamba trades with many places in China, with South India, Southeast Asia, and some countries you can see here. And here, more detail, we see the Mission Sanctuary's location. This area, you see this area belong to Amaravati area. And as I say that Chamba was divided into several areas, and this area belong to Amaravati area. So it's bordered by the Hai Vang Pass on the north and Rangkur Pass on the south, and Mission located in the mountain area. It seems that there are states or a kingdom was established based on this river. This is the Thu Bong River, you see. It's run from the mountain area to the sea area, and along this river, there are several centers were established, including Mission. Mission is the center of Hinduism, where worship the gods, especially Shiva god. And Turkey is the center of power, the imperial city, Hoi An and James Island is the center of trade. So based on this river, there's activities of the good exchange between the lowland and midland. Also the river mouth where to commune with the world. So you see that Mission was set up, were built beside the Thu Bong River. We see more detail about Mission site. Almost the monuments of Mission were built inside the valleys. You see these valleys is surrounded by the mountain range around these valleys. And on the south of this valley, there's a highest mount. This mount were mentioned in the stele around 4th century with the name Mahabhatvata, means a Greek mount. And there's a stream issued from this mount through this valley to follow this way to connect with Thu Bong River. So you see that along this river, several centers was established. And Professor Trần Quốc Vượng, his role model, like this. On the north, we see the Hai Vang Pass, and along the Thu Bong River, several centers were established with the Mission, Holy Land, Ra Kieu Y, Postrates, Chim Post, Hoi An, Trading Post, and James Island along the sea. And on the west is the mountain areas, remarkable with Mahabhatvata mountain. and on the sea here. So in this map, we see more detail about Misang valleys. Almost the monuments were built inside these valleys and is protected by nature. The mountain range is run around these valleys. And there's this stream, its name is Keta stream, is connect this valley with the Thubong River. And there's just one way, you see, one way to go to the side. So here, the drawing of Henri Parmentier in beginning of 20th century. You see the Misang valleys, which remarkable by the Greek Mount Mahabharata. Local people call Hồng Đền or Núi Chúa. It means that Greek Mount is highest mount in this area. And we can see this mount from Hội An, from Da Nang, from Thu Bong River. So it look like the landmark to recognize the Misang sanctuaries. And almost the monuments will be in these valleys. We also see the situation of Misang site in the beginning of 20th centuries. These were discovered by Eiffel, scholar of Eiffel at that time. And we also see the situation of it. Several rock parts of the architecture were collapsed down. You see G1, also E1, F1, and several monuments is lost the rock parts. We could say that Misang heritage site is located in the natural valleys with springs flowing through and surrounded by high mountains, which create an ideal site for the most cultural condenses. Religious centers for the ancient Chamba kingdom. Misang heritage has not only outstanding cultural aesthetic values, but also the perfect natural landscape. Turn to the next point. In this point, I would like to show you some characteristics of the architecture in Misang site. We should mention about this stele, because this stele mentioned about the first king, Bahadur Ravasman I, who reigned from 380 to 413. And the first king were dedicated to Bahaduresvara Shiva god, first temple with the land in heaven. The content of this epitaph say that a perpetual endowment has been given to Bahaduresvara by our king Bahadur Ravasman, who is devoted to the feast of Bahaduresvara Ravasmin, to which the land within the boundaries, Sulaha mountain in the east, Greek mountain Mahabharata in the south, Kukaka mountain in the west, and Greek river in the north, together with inhabitants, has been given. The revenues consist of the six of produce. As the god Shiva is called Bahaduresvara, it's good follow that the temple were also founded by Bahadur Ravasman, for it were a well-known usage in the countries to designate Shiva by a term composed of the first part of the king's name and the word Isvara. So the first temple we see is compounded between the name of the king and the name of Shiva god. However, Professor Shahai, he has another explain. It's possible that the Misang sanctuary worship Bahaduresvara as the most powerful manifestation of Shiva. This belief was worshipped in the coastal temple in eastern India in the early centuries and influenced the country in Southeast Asia at that time. So here we can see the map of Misang site. We see that almost the monuments were built into groups. You see several groups were built in Misang site. And when a French scholar came to study and discover Misang, they named A group, B group, C group, D, E, F, G, H, L groups, and groups and several groups were built in these valleys. So we look at in terms of the topologies, we see that they based on the low mood and the hill to build the temple on. The periods from the 7th to 9th centuries. You see BCD group, A groups, EF groups were built on the low mood. However, from 13th to 14th centuries, the monuments were built on the high hills. For example, G groups or H group, you see. Similar to another temple of Champa, in that period from the 13th to 14th, almost the monuments were built on the top of the hills. Similar G groups, H group, also elder monuments. In terms of the direction of the main temple, we see that there are two directions. This group, A groups, G group, E groups, F group, face to the west. It's uncommon in Champa monuments. However, H group, BCD groups face to the east. Some scholars say that mission will be inside the valleys. It is a circle, so have no direction. However, we see the facts that the temple must face to the stream. You see, the face to stream. So stream or water elements is so important, similar to other Champa monuments in the central Vietnam. It normally face to stream, face to river or the sea or the pool of water. In this case, we also consider these elements, stream or water elements. As you see that the first temple was built by Bahadur Rapasman around 4th century. However, the oldest temple we can see nowadays is built by brick monument around 7th to 8th centuries. That's E1 temple, this temple, because from the 4th to 6th centuries, on most of the monuments were built by wooden material, and at the end of the 6th centuries, most of them were damaged by fire. And so, from the 7th centuries, brick monuments will appear. For example, E1 temple. So from the 7th to 14th centuries, almost the monuments were built by bricks, combined with the sandstone in Mission side. And here we see the pictures of Mission valleys. You can see that the mountain range is surrounded by these valleys, and remarkable by Heights Mount, Mahabharata, or Greek Mount on this area. And in front of this BCD group, we see the stream. You can see the stream here. And this group protected by the enclosed wall. You see double enclosed wall. And even here, you can see the bomb crater here. So you see the enclosed wall go around to protect the main temple. So in this group, we see the main temple here, the gate and longhouse, similar in these groups, main temple, the gate and longhouse in front. In terms of the chronologies of these groups, this is the oldest temples were built around 8th centuries. This one 9th century, this one is 10, 11, 12, 13th centuries, or different chronologies. However, for example, C1 temple is well rebuilt around its 11th centuries. However, its pedestal with Shiva statue inside these temples date back to 8th centuries. Similar in B1, we see its pedestal date back to 8th centuries. So many temples were rebuilt, reconstruction by the Cham people, ancient Cham people. So here we see the process of the complex in Mission side. We see that we should mention about this model because, as I say, that from the 4th to 6th centuries, almost will be by the wooden material. You can see this model. According to researchers Kittikhun and Sigara, he stated that there are two types of the temple of Chamba. The first type is open sanctum temple. The second one is closed sanctum temple. With this model, you see that this is one kind of open sanctum model with simple wood structures. The Cham people called Yanut. They have a terracotta rope to cover the pedestal. You see, there are no wall around, and they're just 4 pillars. However, in Vision, until now, we cannot see the structures. We just see in some temple on the south of Chamba, for example, Bokram Garai temple. It's just left on the base of the pillar, 4 base of the pillar in E1 temple, or several temples in Vision. And next to the next stage, we see this stage around 7, 8 centuries. This stage, the bricks monuments will appear with a simple construction. There are just a main temple, the gate, and secondary temple. And next stage, we see the arc, the enclosed wall. Also, you see there not only main temple, but also secondary temple, the tower, Kosagaha, the gate, longhouse. And next day, and these days date around from 9 centuries. And next day from 10 to 11th century in BCD groups, you see this complex is the more architecture. You see not only main temple, they have around the main temple, they have a small shrine where worship the god of the direction. Secondary temple, the tower of fire, the Kosagaha, or the tower of water. They have a gate, they have a long house, they have a double enclosed wall. It's different from previous days. However, from the 13th to 14th centuries, you see there are 2 groups were built at this time. G group and S group were built on the hills with the simple structure. They are just main temple, base, longhouse, and Kosagaha storm. We cannot see the periods with the secondary temple or other structures like the previous periods. In S group will be around at the end of 13th or beginning of 14th centuries. We see that it's quite different from another groups because the longhouse we were built inside the enclosed wall. This can explain that the space, the platform on the top of the hills is so small. So they move this structure into the sacred area. Here, more detail, we look at the BCD groups. Again, I would like to state that when French scholar came to study mission, they named it B groups, C groups, and D groups. However, in fact, that these buildings belong to these structures. You see, also these belong to these groups. So we should not to divide it into this group by this architecture here. And we look at the main temple. The main temple always build the biggest architecture, also the highest, and normally it's ordered on the central of one groups. And in the middle, they established the pedestal with Shivalinga in the middle. And around the main temple, they have the shrine, small shrines for the gods of direction. For example, 7, 8, B8, B9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And they have a secondary temple this one and this one. This temple worships the son of Shiva, Skanda, and this one worships Shiva's son, Ganesha. And these monuments, some people call the fire tower, Koshagaha, where they keep the property, to keep the fire of the kingdom. And opposite this, tower face to the north, the direction of Kubera God. And opposite this, we see the tower of water. Until now, we can see the water tanks still keep inside the tower. And this is the gate. This gate, you see the enclosed one linked to the gate, you see. So the enclosed one linked with this gate, and there are just one way to get inside the sacred area or inside the main temple. And in front of the gate, we see the long house with two doors on the east and on the west. There's several windows, normally called the Mandapa or long house in front of the gate. And beside the Mandapa, we see several Mandapa, different Mandapa around here. So similar to the C group, you see the main temple, gate, long house, secondary temple, storeroom, and you can see here the water tower. So, and here more detail, one groups, and as I explained that this architecture belong to this temple, so should not to divide it into one groups here. Go into see detail about one temple, A1 temple. This is A1 temple. In Misung side, normally there are three parts of the temple, main temple. Normally foundation, body, the roof, with the Kailasa, Amalaka. On the roof parts, normally there are 5 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And in this sanctum sanctorum, in the middle of the temple, there are the pedestal where worship the Shiva Linga, and they have a niche or light along inside the main temple. Also, they have a secondary temple around A1 temple. And you see the elevation of A1 temples. Normally, under the pedestal, they have a holy host, but this straw is not present. So you see the step, pyramidal step you shape on the tops of the temple, you see. And here in terms of the typologies of Mission temple, as I say that there are 2 types, according to some scholar, open sanctum temple and closed sanctum temple. However, in the closed sanctum temple, we see in Mission that there are 2 types. The first type, we can with the step pyramidal ropes, you see, and the second type is curved ropes. The curved ropes is so popular in Mission site around 10 to 11 centuries. For example, see B5, they have a curved rope like this, and they decorate on the surface of the wall with the floral, the human figure, and different pillars. They decorate the different buttons. For example, this area, this period around 10 to 11 centuries, the X shape is the typical of this period. We turn to the structures of stone door frame. Almost the temple will be by bricks. However, the door frame with the decorative pillar, you can see here, they use sandstone. You see sandstone. And over sandstone, they have a lintel and tympan. normally depict the Shiva dancings, and inside they have dove frame. They use sandstone to build. I would like also introduce to you the pictures of the pillars for periods, two periods. The first periods around 8th century, you see they have a round pillar, and around 9th century, you see the octagonal pillar with decoration on the surface, and the end of 9th century centuries without the decoration around, and 10 to 11th centuries, we see this pillar, and the last around 13th or 14th centuries, the pillar become more simple. It's just square shapes, and there are no any decoration. And here we see the architectural processing of temple and tower in Misan is probably from the 7th, 8th century to 14th centuries. Almost the temple were rebuilt or built from 9, 10, 11, and 12th centuries. Here are some remain typical temple in Misan. In C1 temple, the main temple with the curved roofs, B5 curved roofs. Also the D2 is the main part. They have several windows. They have 2 doors on the east and the west, and on the top they have the tie ropes, terracotta tie rope with wood structures, but we can't see nowadays. Or B3 temples, you see. I can say that the architecture in Misan has been developed for a long process from the 4th to 13th centuries, from wooden temple to bricks and sandstone construction, from the open sandstone temple to closed sandstone temple, inspired by South India. The works are influenced by the Dravida style, South India, as well as the elements of art and sculpture of neighboring countries. The main material is still fire bricks, although damaged by the nature and war. The architectural ruins are vivid evidence for the comparative studies of the relationship between art, architecture, and religion in the regions. The plan of the Chamba temples may have been influenced by the South India architecture of the Pallava period, especially the Mahabalipuram temple complex from 7th to 8th century, according to Stan in 1942 and Tagel in 1990. Turn to the next point in terms of the conservation. In this section, I would talk about the material characteristic and building techniques. The second point is the major decays in Misan, and then next is conservation principle of Misan site. And last one is some case of the conservation activity in Misan site. Actually, the conservation of Misan monuments began in the early parts of 20th century CE, soon after their discovery in modern times by French archaeologists. During the World War II, especially during the Second Indochina War, many towers and temples were damaged. However, the conservation work has been carried out, and remaining towers and temples have been maintained and are well preserved. In terms of the material, the construction material are essential for the restoration of building heritage. This must be open mortalities. In the case of monuments made of bricks, such as Misan monuments, then stone or wood heritage host material are more readily available. Research on material used in Misan were conducted about on-site experiments on mortar and in laboratories, analysis on bricks, spider, lamp, glaze. Research findings show the characteristic of original bricks and set the standard for bricks production to ensure that the best compatibilities between old and new bricks. So we should mention about the products. of UNESCO protest on the spreading the mission World Heritage Site cooperation between the UNESCO, Vietnam, and Italy. They have many research on materials and new material for conservation of mission site. So here, the result of the research based on the original chart, we see that the results show the high presence of silic oxide from brick powder. You see from brick powder here, low quantity of calcium oxide and of carbon dioxide that's allowed to exclude the presence of land. So there are no land inside the bricks, also the joint between the bricks. It's present, the organic matter were identified into the organic joint and filling. The text carry on the original joint have a gnostic presence of organic materials, in particular Dhamma, substance present in the trees common in mission areas. This is very important text, important result of the text. It shows that there are no land inside the bricks, also the joint between bricks, and it's a presence of the organic material. This is so important. So we see that actually the naturalizing Henry Bachmann make an assumption that the ancient Cham architecture used an organic present to buy bricks that can prevent the growth of vegetation inside the joint. However, there has not been research conducted to test his typology. An organic rising from Heterocarpacillary alanta, an indigenous trees often known as Yao Rai in Vietnam, found in central Vietnam, central Laos, northern Thailand. This organic resin is still being used by Vietnamese in the region today in caulking wooden bowls and in the production of the color pigment. So you see that this Yao Rai trees is the natural resin we use to preserve and conserve the monuments in Mission. From this tree, you can see to take the resin from this tree, we use the fire to heat on the surface. You see, heat on the surface, and then we cut the surface and we wait some day to collect the resin. You see the resin here to join the bricks together. This resin is approximately the organic spider between bricks, particularly in monsoon areas with the high humidities such as Mission. The resin needs to be used in mixtures of the shell lamp powder and bricks powder as mortar for internal parts of masonries. So far, no one has confirmed that the ancient Cham people used Yao Rai to join the bricks, but research results show that the ancient people used organic material, include Dhamma, substance present in trees common in mission areas. The resin from Yao Rai trees can be used to buy bricks is compatible with the bricks material, so it was used for restoration. So here, in terms of the new bricks, and we see that the number of the original bricks collected from the collapsed buildings and excavation were not sufficient for restoration. Therefore, there was a need to produce the new bricks, which is compatible with the original bricks in the chemical physical standards. This type of bricks require quality glaze and the same techniques of production as in the past. The result meet the technique requirement. This is contribute remarkably to the future restoration activity of Cham and other Hindu influenced by the ancient monuments. So we produce the new bricks for restoration, and it meets the requirement. And you see here the bricks were made by hand. You see we have a mold. We use clay to put on and make the shape of the bricks like this. Shell lamps is also essential material we need for restoration. You see here, the shell lamp we use to produce the mortar following the proportion of 1 part of shell lamp and 3 parts of bricks powder. We collect the fragment of bricks and to make powder, and then mix with the shell lamp with the proportion 3 parts of shell lamp and 3 parts of bricks powder to make mortar to fill inside the wall, brick wall. So in terms of the sandstone and laterite, it is an essential material for restoration of the monuments. Laterite is far from Mission site. It's around 90 kilometers in Quảng Ngãi province or Bình Định province. However, this material we can buy, and this material is still being used by local in the building house. And sandstone is near Mission. Stone very near Mission Village. It's around 4 kilometers from the site. In terms of the construction techniques, I just focus on bricks connection. The bricks connection consider the different brick shape. Research shows that the ancient Cham people massive structures with sharp red bricks assembled by hand pumping to produce the thin joint typical in Cham bricks monuments. And next point, we see the major decays in Mission. Actually, Mission heritage were in part by many elements, such as war, flooding, harmful organisms, harmful animals, and insects, high humidities, water, climate change. This is the cause of deformation, crumbling, cracking, subsidences, tilting, eruption, loss, structural damage, or mechanical damage, surface alteration, disintegration of building material. And here we see the situation of the monuments before restoration. For example, G1, these parts were collapsed by walls, by bomb. And you see on behind of this temple, there are bomb crater, very big. Also, you see this corner is collapsed, and you can see the gap of bricks here. Also, this place we see the mixing bricks on the surface of the wall. Our staircase it will fall down. You see the situation is a very serious problem. And first we clean and documentary, and then we do the excavation. In the process of excavation, we try to collect the bricks, and we make a measurement, and we divide into different sides for restoration. And in this temple, we see that the outer wall is total collapse, and this wall, the south wall, is there cracked. There's many problems. Also inside, we can't see anything inside. You see the wall is very thick. We have to strengthen by the wood. In this case, you see it left only foundation. In this corner is yielding substances. This corner, you see up the G, this one is G4 of the G groups. The situation of the wall, you see that incoherent deposits. You see cracked, the gaps, tilting, collapse, mixing bricks, the situation of the wall. So before we intervention the monuments, we should follow some principle. This is the main principle adaptists were following to respect the authenticity of the original masonries and perform reconstruction only were strictly necessary to forbid, in principle, the introduction of the new material different from the original ones, as steel, concrete, cement mortars, or high-reinforced plastics to avoid incompatibilities, and also taking into the accounts for differences and apply in durable materials in the peculiar tropical environment to preserve the remains parts of the collapsed building as much as possible by repair and local consolidation, to reconstruct by the analysis the section where the stability or durability problems are present, leaving the index of present of profile of the rooms as much as possible, to use new bricks well distinguished from the old one by the case of dangers, stability deficiencies, and to use the natural resin to create the new joint at outer wall and use bricks fragment with the hydraulic mortar for inner reconstruction. This is the basic principle to apply for mise en scène when we do the preservation or conservation at the site. And here I want to give some case, some example of the conservation activities. I will show the very detailed case of the situation of the monuments and how we invent, how we preserve and intervention the case. Okay, it's left around 40 minutes. We can see the, for example, this is the dismantling phase. You see the situation of this one. They have a crack, it's not stable, and the joint is locked. There's a gap. So we documentary, and then we number carefully on the surface by the way that we account how many layers. For example, one layer, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7. And this is the second layer, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, to identify its position, original position of the wall. And then we dismantle and we number again because we use the charts to number on the surface. So it's easy to detect by rain or water. So we number by the acetone you see on the surface. And then we take down to put on the shapes like this. And then we put back the same position, original position. And we fill there some gap with the bricks. And here we see the, for example, here in G3s, we see the foundation of the walls. Normally they have 3 lips, 1, 2, and 3 lips. The outer lips and inner lips with the in the middle. They normally they put the they have a choice. They have a fragment of bricks, piece of bricks inside, and you see the its foundation in also lips. They the Cham people they fill by sand and purples on the first layer or at the bottom, and 3 layers of bricks and laterite you see, and then they build the wall on. And here you see the external left wall will rebuild the same bricks, the original bricks, placed in the same position with the natural resin. So we use the natural resin to build the outer lip and inner lips. And in the middle, we build with the mortar to connect between 2 lips. And you see here, every 3 or 4 rounds, you see 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds, one entire bricks were inset to better connect to external leaves one. You see. And this is the phase of intervention. The outer wall, we use the natural resin. Of course, before we cook the resin. And you see, we use the resin to join the bricks. And then they sharpen by hand. And then the workers use the plastic hammers to press on for fixing. In this phase, we always use the dry bricks. Should be the dry bricks because it's wet. The quality change. And in this phase, when we finish the outer wall, we wait for several days. And then we use the mortar and wet bricks. Must be wet bricks with the mortar. Normally, we use these bricks to put inside the water several hours before we use to fill inside the wall. You see. Also, we use the hammer, plastic hammer, to press on for fixing. And I give another example about the single lacunar replacing. You see on the surface of the wall, there's many mixing bricks. You see. So we first we mapping up the single lacunar, cleaning up the cavities, moving and fixing bricks with the mortar inside the wall, and fixing bricks with the natural resin outside. You see here is the two images. This is the case that the mixing bricks we see, and then after cleaning we see the gap here, and after brick fixing with mortar, and after brick fixing with the natural resin, you see. In this case, the damaged bricks, you see, we clean and then we're fixing with the natural resin bricks. And here we see the process of we laborers do that clean at the gap, and then they measure the size of bricks, they cut, and then they put with the bricks with the mortar inside, and outside they wait for the rise on the surface, and then they use the resin with bricks to put in. The damaged bricks were normally were removed until in good condition bricks were found. The cavities of lost bricks were accurately cleaned, and the incoherent material, soil, root bricks, fragment of damaged steel present were removed by chisel and brush. After the mentioned bricks measure, an original charm bricks has been cut by the stationary cutter matching and bond with the mortar for the inner coin. You see, the process of the bricks with the mortar, brick with the resin, natural resin here. Before and after. Similar in this parts, we see the situation of bricks is mixing some place, lock the joint, and moving some tiltings. So we have to rearrange. We have to filling many bricks on the surface of bricks. Also here we see some bricks is broken. We have to replace or strengthen this lintel. So in this case, is mixing up the wall. The wall is mixing the wall, outer wall. So in this case, we use the quite new bricks with the natural resin to build and support for the original wall, inner lip inside. And for differentiate between the new and old, we move in around 10 centimeter. Compare the surface, the original surface, and new surface of the wall. You see. In this case, the same. You see that in C1 they use the lateral on the surface of the corridor, of these monuments. So we see the gap collapse, the corner. So we strengthen the lion at the corner, and then we replace the some broken laterites on the survey you see. And before and after, you can compare. You see this corner we strengthen for this. This is the basement of the pillar, front pillar. Also, in this case, we do the same. You see, we strengthen for this area, also filling many layers of mixing bricks. In this case, the corner has a yielding, you see, due to the foundation problem. On the corner has been dismantled, including the foundation of bricks. So we dismantle to see the last layer, and we check the foundation carefully. And then we fill by sand and purple. The original foundation level has been restored by the reparation made of sand and purple, following the same charm techniques. So, and then we put back the original bricks after we number. And you see here, process, we use the sand to fill in. Then we use the mortar. And then we use the mortar to fill in the first layer, you see. And then we use the original bricks to restore the inner wall and outer wall, and fill the mortar of a fragment of bricks in the middle. You see many labor to work in corner, because at this time, the skilled workers teach for unskilled worker in G groups. In this case, we make a problem that we restore the staircase, but we don't know the shape of each staircase. So it was impossible to trace the original shapes of the lateral parapet, and parapet profiles had been left as a runes. You see, we leave this as a rune because we don't know its shape. In this case, you see this one, there's three lips, one in the middle, pass, and this leg, there's crack. You see crack here. Also, this one is tilting. We have to support by frame, iron frame, and wood frame. You see. So we this case, we have a solution in that. We have to open in the middle of the wall. You see, because after cleaning and move the middle parts, we have to replace this one for strengthen, and then we fill by new bricks and mortar in the middle to connect between two walls. You see, after filling, and here we see the situation of G1 before restoration and after intervention. You see another phase of G1 before and after. Another case of in A groups with the temple A10 groups. In this case, we see that the south wall of A10 temple, you see it's happened. It's many tricks for this wall. They have cracks, mixing, clapping, and you see the situation is very thick. It needs to be preserved. The situation of A10, you see A10 temple before intervention, and it still left the decoration of the wall on the south wall, and on the east face, you see it's collapsed on the outer lips, outer wall. You see it's collapsed on, and you see inside there's nothing inside. You cannot see any pedestal inside this temple. or you see some parts of the wall is falling down. And when we do the excavation inside the 18th temple, we rediscover the Shivalinga. You see, it will fall down inside the holy house. It's around 2 meter deep, and we found this also some parts of the pedestal. And then we rearrange this pedestal. You see, we based on the survey that we found many pieces in these areas. You see here in 18th temple, many pieces belong to 18th temple. So, for example, this piece, this one belong to this layer of pedestal. This piece we take from this corner, you see, and then we rearrange the whole the pedestal of 18th temple. You see, this pedestal is arranged by 5 layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. You see, before intervention, we didn't see anything inside the temple, but after restoration, we rearrange the pedestal and order on the original floor. Fortunately, we found the original floor and we ordered in the middle of the temple. So you can compare before restoration and after restoration a 18th temple. Beside the pedestal, we also identify the place to put the decorated pillar and door frame of 18th temple. So you see, before restoration, we have no any pedestal or a pillar, but after restoration, you can see some elements of this architecture, also the staircase, and after restoration, the researcher can image about the space of the main temple. Also, we try to keep its shape, the shape of these monuments. Similar in you see in 18 before clean, after clean, and after restoration. These monuments were restored by the projects cooperation between the Vietnam and Indian this year. Another case I want to mention is that the A1 temple. This temple were collapsed down by bomb in 1969. You see, it's left only the foundation of the monuments. And you see the frame door lintel is collapsed down. It's left only a very low wall. It's covered by grass, soil, and the pedestal inside, and the foundation around the basement around the temple. So after we clean, we strengthen some areas of the wall. We also try to identify the position of the you see the door frame, and then we put back. You see, this is so heavy. It's around 3 tons heavy of this pillar. So in this case, I want to show you because as I say that it belonged to the A1 temple. This temple were damaged by bomb. So on most of the parts of the construction were broken, plumbing, and it's left just only one piece. It had the decoration. This pattern is very typical for this temple. For these periods, around 10 to 11 centuries. So we have some option. We can move this part to the museum. The second option, we can display in front of the main temple A1. Or another option, we put back on this corner. So we option that we put back. we try to dismantle, try to identify the original position based on the document, and we try to dismantle this, and then we put back, resemble on this corner. You look like this. However, when we dismantle, the joint is locked. So we have to number carefully one by one a brick onto face, and we check carefully, think very well, and then we resemble on the corner. Sorry, you can see here. We do step by step to restore this part of the corner of the temple, because it's very typical for this temple. Also, the architecture in Viet side. In A1, we meet a problem is that this temple was restored in 1980s. So we have two options. We try to keep this part, this original one. This part is restored in 1980s, and this one is new restored one this year. So we try to keep this area because in this case we keep because that is considered a part of the history of monuments. So we try to keep the storage parts. So this case in key groups, you can see before restoration and after restoration of the monuments. In this tower, you see that we just suppose some areas of the wall. You see also staircase. Also on the top, we try to make a stable on the top of the this tower, and we pay attention to the drainage. Make a drainage for water exit from this area. Also in H group, we see before and after. I could say that the architecture in Mission has been developed for a long process of the 4th centuries to 13th centuries, from wooden temple to bricks and stone construction. Inspired by the South India, the works are influenced by the South Indian, especially is the Dravida style, as well as the elements of sculpture of neighboring countries. The main material is still fire-rich bricks. Although damaged by the natures and wars, the architectural ruins are very rich evidence for the comparative studies of the relationship between art, architecture, and religion in the region. Mission heretics were one of the most important Hindu religious centers of Chamba Kingdom. Although Mission heretics exist only as ruins, it is a typical example of Chamba civilization that one forms and developed in central Vietnam. The architecture was heavily damaged by the time and wars, but what remains are the evidence of the continuous development process of near 10 centuries. The conservation of these bricks architectural ruins remain a big challenge. Despite many achievements in the study of material, technique, and methods, Mission located in the heart of the valleys, so Mission is still being affected by many nature factors. I could mention again some principle we apply for Mission monuments to build the brick masonries without using the mortars in the external joint. Prevent, preserve the profile of buildings as it were found in state of ruins. Apply charm construction technique. Reuse as much as possible original material from the monuments and brick recovered during the archaeological excavation. Dismantling and resampling parts of the constructors where the original joint is lost. Use compatibility binder only when the original one is lost. and the joint is really in two different ways. A natural resin to bond oranginobugs of the external leaf wall, and the mortar and the piece of oranginobugs or anti-nubugs for inner filling. Make a pastille construction only in case of stability problem. Use a new material when the absolution necessary. And 3 must be compatibility between the new and old material. So that's all of my presentation. I hope that is a useful for you.